Welcome again to our program, Minnesota Crime Wave Presents. I'm Carl Brookins, author of Bloody Halls, an urban crime novel, A Lake Superior Mystery, and The Case of the Greedy Lawyers, about a really short PI. This is program number 31 in our series of discussions and interviews with authors and others involved in the writing business. With me in the studio, as always, are my excellent co-hosts, Ellen Hart, author of the excellent Jane Lawless mystery series. Her current novel is called The Mirror and the Mask, and it will soon be joined by her latest novel, which is called The Cruel Ever After. What an intriguing title that is.
Great titles, both of those.
Good.
And also here at our black round table is another fine novelist and our co-host, William Kent Kruger. He's the author of the Cork O'Connor series set in the mythical Aurora, Minnesota. That is, there is a real Aurora, but that's not where it's
not my Aurora.
Not your Aurora. His novel Vermilion Drift is about to come out, and there'll be more in the Cork O'Connor series, as well as some other things we might talk about one day. Coming up a little later in the program, an interview with Minnesota author Judith Yates Borger. She wrote a crime novel called Where's Billy? She had a successful career in local journalism, and her latest novel called Whose Hand? We're going to find out a lot about that. But first, let's talk about characters. Where do they come from? How do you develop them? And how do you relate to them? Cork, you're not Cork, you're Kent. Hey, Kent, what's a Cork O'Connor?
What's a Cork O'Connor? I hope a really intriguing protagonist.
I think so.
Well, I think so too. And I've lived with Cork now for, let's see, it must be about 18 years.
Is it that
18
long?
years
Is
ago, I
that
conceived
right?
Cork O'Connor.
Wow.
It just took a very long time for him finally to reach print. But when Cork was conceived, I didn't really know that I was going to write a mystery series featuring this guy. This is what I knew about him. I knew I was going to write about a guy who was so resilient that no matter how far life pushed him down, he would always bob back to the surface, and his name was Cork. That was the C.
It's short for Corcoran, isn't it?
It became short for Corcoran,
But before the story came to you, he came to you.
he came to me, yep.
Okay.
And then once I decided to set the books up north and use the Ojibwe culture, Cork became part Irish and part Ojibwe. Cork became Corcoran O'Connor, and the rest is history.
Is history. That's right.
So what about, what's a Jane Lawless?
What's a Jane Lawless? You know, when I started writing, I had an idea for a story. I had a setting. I had a crime. And I needed a character that I could fit into that to become the sleuth. And so she appeared after the idea for me and pretty much adapted herself to the story. I'm glad that I did certain things with her. I'm happy for the background I gave her, for the family that I gave her.
Is she happy with all that, do you think?
I think so. I mean, I haven't checked in with her today, but I think so.
Now, you have actually four different protagonists if you count Tanner and Whitney.
Did the people come first, or the character come first? Or
The stories came first. In all cases, the stories came first. When I wrote the sailing series, I wanted somebody who had the money to be able to not have to worry about, and a job that he didn't have to worry about being at every day, which meant he had to be fairly wealthy, and public relations seemed to be good. But I wanted somebody who was a real moral, upright fellow. That I knew was the beginning of the first story, and Inner Passages, which is about his coming apart, really, and how he discovers. I would say that he was a right-leaning, right-of-center Republican who always paid his taxes on time, believed in government, and everything worked. And after, when his wife was killed in the first book, he discovered that government doesn't always work, and that kind of radicalized him. So he became a little bit more progressive, which is how he was able to relate more with Mary Whitney.
Now, Tanner's a fairly normal character, all things considered. But you write about one guy that's really not a normal character.
I do, yeah. Well, you're talking about my short detective who came
Sean.
Sean. Sean, NMI Sean, who came about because I needed a detective, but I wanted to write about the detective genre in a kind of a reverse way, so that he's not your typical fictional PI. He's a different kind of PI. He's short, he has a tall girlfriend, he doesn't sleep around, and things like that. And we'll get into all that, but we're going to take a short break now, and we'll be back in a few minutes with our guest, reporter, novelist, Judith Yates Borger. Our guest today is writer Judith Yates Borger, journalist, author. We first met you when we were doing that anthology called Silence of the Loons. No?
Resort to Murder.
Resort to Murder.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I actually knew you long before that.
Well, all right,
Right.
never mind.
That's right.
We're going to have a little more formal introduction, and Ellen's going to do it.
Okay. Well, we have known each other since you wrote Hunter's Lodge
Right.
for Resort to Murder. That's where I first met you.
Right?
Me too.
You have been an editor at Twin Cities Magazine, Minnesota Business Journal, and Corporate Report, and you worked for the St. Paul
St.
Pioneer
Paul
Press.
Pioneer Press,
What
right,
did you
for
do
about
at
10 years.
What did you do there?
I was a reporter.
General assignment?
No, I never did general assignment. I covered the university during the Gopher basketball scandal.
Right.
Everybody remember
Oh,
Jan
yeah.
Gangelhoff?
Oh,
Remember
sure.
Jan?
Yeah.
So that was about a year of my life. And the most recent thing I did before I left, I worked out of the Minneapolis Bureau. And I used to tell people I was a foreign correspondent. I explained Minneapolis to the people of St. Paul. And that is exactly how I used to think about it. So that's what I did. That was my last go-round at the Pioneer
And
Press.
then
I was there about 10 years.
You worked online at
Well, I still do some work for MinPost.com.
yeah, MinPost, right?
I had a piece up there in just a couple of weeks ago about using the iPad in Europe.
Oh,
And yeah,
okay. Do you have an iPad?
I have an iPad.
I do too.
Ooh,
They're so
wonderful.
sexy.
Never mind. Explain that's okay.
Sorry,
Explain
sorry.
just briefly what MinPost is, would you?
MinPost is an online news site focusing in on Minnesota news. Many of the people who work there worked at the St. Paul and the Minneapolis newspapers. The founder is Joel Kramer, who was editor and publisher of the Star Tribune. We report, I think it goes up every day about 11:30. It tends to be in-depth, people who know what they're talking about.
Good writing.
Very good writing.
And it's a subscriber, you can subscribe to it. Correct?
Well, no,
You
it's
can
for
just-
free. It works just like, you should pardon the expression, Minnesota Public Radio. You can be a member, but anybody who wants
Anybody
to
can read it.
can
Yeah.
log on, and it's www.minpost, MINNPOST.com.
All right. Get off that.
When we first had coffee, I can remember you wanted me to look at your first book, and I can remember that you were on the phone half the time, and you were not half the time, but you were going to interview somebody.
Yeah, I was doing
And
journalism while I was doing fiction.
But
at
it
the
was
same
so
time.
interesting because her character, Skeeter Hughes, is a reporter, and you understand the newsroom, you understand, all that stuff is so real in your books.
Oh, thank